guys, John from Heroes and Legends, and we have more Hour of Devastation previews to look at. We will be examining all the cards that have come out over the last 24 hours or so, and again, there's some good ones here. I am very impressed with the direction this set is going. Very excited for it to come out. Quickly before we get started though, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support us. One of which is our Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases there, a small percentage will come back to help us out. And secondly, you'll find our Patreon page, also linked below. Both are always appreciated. With that out of the way, let's get into the cards. We're going to start off with a real good one. This is Nimble Obstructionist. It costs a blue and 2 Bird Wizard rare, flash flying, and it's a 3/1. You can cycle it for a blue and 2, and when you cycle this, counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control. Alright, this card was previewed by LSV on the Channel Fireball site yesterday. And typically when Wizards gives LSV and Channel Fireball preview card, they do so with competitive Magic in mind. And this one's no exception. This card feels like it will be great in competitive, standard, and perhaps even modern, maybe even legacy. There's a lot going on behind this card. Now, if you read LSV's article, and I would recommend it, it's a pretty short article, but he does talk about some of the similarities between this card and Vendilion Clique. And in some ways, they're doing different things. Like the second ability, yes, is very different, but there's a lot of similarities in the way that it's a 3/1, flash flying for 3, even though mana requirements are a little different, sure. But this does a lot of the things that that first part of Clique already does, and that's put more pressure on your opponent. Pressure their life total, pressure planeswalkers, and this card, a 3/1 in the air out of nowhere with flash, can actually really make you rethink your game plan on the fly, right? So that kind of disruption and pressure can be really, really strong. Now, the secondary ability here, yes, Clique has a very different ability. That ability is great, but this one is good too. I mean, cycling for 3, it does replace itself. That's kind of nice. And then you get to stifle something. And stifle is one of my favorite effects in Magic. And I'm glad they're exploring this design space more and more. For many years, I felt like, okay, stifle was the card that did this. And recently we got disallow. And now here's another card that's allowing us to stop activated or triggered abilities. And they do all sorts of things, right? Like this type of card can shut down a whole gamut. You could probably sit here and list for days all the different triggers that could be affected by something like this. I mean, maybe the one that jumps to mind the fastest are things like Evolving Wilds or Fetch Lands, just shutting them down. But really, any ability that's triggered or activated, you can kind of tempo out with a card like this, and that can be pretty sweet in a lot of situations. So, yeah, the card's pretty amazing. Again, I'm happy to play this almost anywhere. It could be a competitive card in numerous formats. I'm really happy to play this in limited, like first pickable in a draft for sure. Really happy if I open this in sealed. And yeah, still good in Commander and even casual formats. I mean, this is a really, really strong card. Proving Combatant is our next card, and it costs a blue. It's a common human warrior, 1/1 with Eternalized for 2 blue and 4. And on the right, you see the Eternalized token. So this one I'm not very high on. And obviously, it's not really doing enough for any sort of competitive Magic. I'll start there. What about draft and sealed? I don't even see myself playing it most of the time there, quite honestly. Here's my problem with the card. A 1/1 for 1 just simply doesn't do enough, even in the limited environment. Now, this is a little more than that, because later on I can Eternalize for Vanilla 4/4, but that Eternalize cost is 2 blue and 4. I'm paying 6 for Vanilla 4/4 at that point, and this card already has to get into my graveyard somehow. I'm just not buying that. A lot of times I'm high on these type of cards because I say they're good early, they're good late. This one is kind of bad early and kind of bad late. So I really think there's better things you can be doing. Now, a lot of people might say, but if you don't play this 1-drop on turn 1, then what's the alternative? You're doing nothing on turn 1. And that might be the case, but I'd rather have a better 2 or 3-drop in my deck as opposed to just carrying this. Is it playable? Well, if I really need a low casting cost playable creature in probably sealed more than draft, then maybe sometimes my arm will be twisted and I might have to play it, but I won't be happy about it. Definitely in draft, I'm going to be passing this up unless it's the last card coming to me, probably. Next we have Sinuous Striker. This one's a little better, but it does suffer from some of the same issues the previous card did. It's a blue and 2, Naga Warrior uncommon, 2/2. You can pay a blue, will get +1/-1 till end of turn, and you can Eternalize for 2 blue and 3, and discard a card. That's interesting. So on your right, of course, you see the token version, which is a 4/4. Now, if you can get to that token, it's a great card in Limited, I think, because 4/4s that I can pump to maybe make a 5/3, 6/2, even a 7/1 if I need to. I like that. That's actually really strong. But you are going to jump through some hoops to get there, right? First off, you're playing a 2/2 for 3 initially. That's not exciting. Yes, it does have the +1/-1 ability, but you can't really tax it that much. It becomes a 3/1, and then that's pretty much it. The Eternalize has an additional cost, not only of 5 mana, 2 on color, but then you also have to discard a card. Keeping in mind, discarding a card isn't always a drawback. I mean, there are reasons that discarding a card can help you, even in the limited environment, with Eternalize and Embalm and Aftermath cards. So you can mitigate that a little bit, but you're not always going to be able to mitigate it. And you're just doing a lot of work and really settling for a mediocre card to get to the better version, which may or may not even happen in a game. So that's my problem with it. In Limited, and we'll just talk about Limited because obviously you probably can tell my feelings, this won't be in Standard. But in a draft situation, I'm probably going to be able to draft better things. Maybe in Sealed, if I do have a lot of Aftermath or Eternalized cards or anything that interacts well with the graveyard, then I might decide to play this and just kind of take the risk and see how it goes. But most of the time, I feel like there's going to be better things I could be doing. Alright, let's move on to Doomfall. This costs a black and 2 sorcery uncommon. Choose one target opponent, exiles a creature he or she controls. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card. Alright, so it looks like this is maybe a cycle. We saw the blue one a few days back. And I wasn't real high on the blue one. I just had an issue with its casting cost for what you were doing, what your choices were, at least in the current Standard environment. I kind of feel the same way about this card, and it seems weird for me to say that in some ways because I usually love cards that are versatile and give you options. Like option cards, I'm usually a sucker for. I'm all for them. But I look at these options, and then I think about other cards that already exist in Standard, and I just feel like, well, why wouldn't I just play the other cards? Now, granted, there's something to be said for versatility. I'll be the first to admit that. And I do want to point out that both of these options exile the card. And that's a big deal in a world where we have so many graveyard shenanigans. But is that casting cost getting me there for Standard? Right now, I can't say that it is. Maybe post-rotation, when a lot of things change, it could be different. But at least for right now, like there's a lot of cards in Standard that I would probably go to before this one. And I don't know, I think these cards are very polarizing. Like I've seen people that really like these cards, the two we've seen so far. And I've seen people that I guess maybe feel more like me, that the casting cost just something doesn't quite add up. Like this couldn't cost 2, it would be way too powerful. But at 3, it almost becomes too slow. And I don't know, like for example, that first Edict ability. Yes, it does exile. But I don't know, would I rather play like Trial of Ambition? And yes, it doesn't exile, but I have the option of perhaps getting it back to my hand with a cartouche at some point. Like, those are the things I'm thinking about. Also, yeah, I love Thoughtseize, one of the best cards ever printed. You have a Thoughtseize-esque ability there that is actually even better because it lets you exile the card. But what's preventing me from playing Thoughtseize on turn 3, even in the world of Standard? Well, Thoughtseize is great because you can do it on turn 1 or turn 2 when you're not necessarily trying to develop your board state or your game plan yet. You're trying to disrupt those first 2 turns or even 3 turns sometimes. But usually the first 2, by turn 3, turn 4, you do want to kind of get your game plan in motion before you start getting beat down by small creatures or something like that, right? So the card becomes a lot worse and you have a decision to make now on turn 3 or turn 4. Do I just go ahead and push out my board state and my game plan, or do I try to play Disruption? And if I try to play Disruption and it turns out my opponent's stumbling on draws, then I just wasted a turn where I could be advancing my board state, right? So, I don't know. It's not a bad card. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to sound too down on it because, like I said, it could be very Standard playable, especially after rotation. But I just want to call out some of the things that make me a little sketchy on this one. And that's kind of it. I mean, as far as Limited goes, yeah, I'm happy to play this. I probably first picked this in a lot of packs in Draft, quite honestly. And in Sealed, it's definitely one of the cards I would highly consider playing that's not a creature in my Sealed pool. So it's going to be really good there, don't get me wrong at all. But I'm a little conflicted when it comes to Standard, I guess. All right, let's look at these 3 cards here. They're kind of a cycle of sorts. Melissa DeToro revealed these today on the Wizards website in an article. And for the most part, they feel like they're good limited cards. And let's look at them one by one. First, the common Torment of Venom. 2 black and 2. It's an instant. Put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature. Its controller loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices another non-land permanent or discards a card. So I like it well enough for, again, maybe sealed and draft. It does take out a lot of things. Putting 3 -1/-1 counters on a creature is going to deal with a lot of problems in the format. I don't love like these Punisher mechanics where your opponent gets to choose what happens, but it's just kind of added on. I'm more interested in that instant speed, -1/-1, 3 counter thing. That to me is where this card really excels. It makes it very playable in both sealed and draft. Next we have Torment of Scarabs. This is a black and 3 or a curse uncommon, enchant player of course. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Okay, so another Punisher mechanic. Again, I'm not always excited about those, but this one can be punishing, right? Like, they have to decide, either take 3 damage, discard a card, or sacrifice a non-land permanent. There might only be so many non-land permanents they have, or so many cards in hand. Eventually, they start to get attritioned out. The only problem I have when it comes to maybe standard is this feels a little expensive at 4, because if I'm behind already, like say I'm up against an aggro deck or something, and I'm taking damage by small creatures, burn spells, whatever, and I play this, I'm taking the turn off to kind of play this, I'm still just taking damage, and yeah, my opponent can toss 3 damage away probably for a few turns and be happy to do so, right? So it doesn't cover all your bases, and I do feel like at 4 mana, I don't see it crossing over into standard, at least with any consistency. I do see myself perhaps playing it in, again, limited games. I don't think I'm first picking or second picking this card, but maybe mid-pack if I happen to get it, I would consider playing it. And again, in some sealed pools is probably just fine. Now let's look at the rare. Torment of Hailfire, 2 black and X. This is a rare sorcery. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Well, now this is starting to get serious, right? The more mana you pump into it, the more times they have to make that choice. And that can be kind of backbreaking, right? Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you automatically win the game or anything, but it can put a lot of pressure on your opponent. I think this one is more of a first pickable card in draft. Definitely playable and sealed. This is awesome in Commander because it hits all your opponents. You might even be able to decimate the board state with this card, take out or come close to taking out anyway an opponent or 2. So I do love the card there, actually. Could this one see standard play? It is requiring a lot of mana. It just depends on what happens in the environment. Typically, black isn't the color you think of when you think of ramp, but if there was some sort of ramp deck out there, maybe, but again, I feel like that's going to be more probably Simic colors than black, so I don't really see that as being something we're going to find necessarily in standard, at least not at this point in the meta, but I don't know, the raw power levels there, it's definitely one to watch. Alright, we got a split card here with Farm to Market. It costs a white and 2, it's an instant uncommon, destroy target attacking or blocking creature, and then the market side is a blue and 2 sorcery. Aftermath, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Great limited card. Like, happy to play this. I might not be first picking it necessarily, but maybe 3rd, 4th pick I could see trying to slam something like this. Like, it's just fine white removal, even if you don't use the market side. Like, the removal for the white is very, very serviceable. And if you can pay the blue later, especially if you don't have anything to do, a double loot, there ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm always happy to do that. So, yeah, really good card, I think, for both draft and sealed. Struggle to Survive. This one's a red and 2 for the first side. Struggle, uncommon instant. Struggle deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control and survive. Green and 1. Sorcery. Aftermath. Each player shuffles his or her library into his or her graveyard. So the second part is a little more conditional. If someone's trying to pull some graveyard shenanigans, it's kind of nice to have, but not always essential. The top part, though, is real good, again, for limited games, sealed or draft. It's a good instant direct damage spell for red and costs 3. Seems really reasonable. It gets better as the game goes on. And yeah, seems like another pick similar to the last one. Maybe not a first or second pick, but it's definitely high up there for probably a lot of packs. Having said that, those are the cards for today. And we saw a lot of cards today that are helping to make up that draft and sealed environment. There's nothing wrong with that. We actually saw some good cards for that environment. And we still did see at least one card that looks amazing for competitive play. So yeah, this set is still shaping up to be amazing. I'm not really sure what previews are going to look like this afternoon or through the weekend. Typically they slow down now until Monday. So at the very least, we'll be back on Monday with another preview video. This weekend, of course, we'll do our Market Watch video, so stay tuned for that. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.